Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's a little bit of a rainy afternoon, but I think we can make a start. My name is Nick DeVoe. My father was a pilot in the Second World War, and I've just always been fascinated with the Second World War for whatever reason. I don't know why, because he certainly did not speak about it. And he died in 1997, and his logbook, which is here, was always in the family, but nobody ever really paid much attention to it. So I had it, and then later on in life, after he passed, I decided I was going to send it all the way to Japan because I saw a story about a World War II veteran who had served. His job was to fly over the carriers at Pearl Harbor. He was shot down after Midway. This guy, and he had shot down several vets himself. He was amazing. So I sent the book over to Japan, but unfortunately he passed away. And then I thought, well, the book is in Japan, it must be somebody else. And there was. And another gentleman who had been at Hiroshima had survived the bombing of the city. His name was Shigeaki Mori, and he signed the book. And when that happened, it was like a curtain lifted, and I just thought, my goodness me, that's an amazing story. Who else? This was in 2016. And so then from there, I just kept going. And here we are, it's 2025, and there are more than 250 signatures in this book of persons all over the world from both sides of the conflict. I became fascinated with the concept of former enemies reconciling. And I started to look for those types of stories. And you will hear from Les tonight. He's going to tell you his story because, well, I'll just tell him a little bit. He was shot down, but later on after the war, he went back and met the German pilot who at first shot up his plane, but then escorted them to a place where they could safely bail out. And I emailed Les, and Les emailed me back right away to say, I'm alive and kicking. And that was in 2017. And he and I have remained close email friends. We've chatted on the phone, and I've been privileged to journey along his life for the last couple of years. And then in October, he called me up and he said, Nick, I want to come to St. Lucia. And I said, well, I guess you're coming to St. Lucia. And so I have had the privilege of this man's company with his travel companion, Mary Jo. Mary Jo, how do you pronounce your last name? Because Rohrbacher. You should see the spelling. A good German name. And Mary Jo herself is a 20-year veteran, and she and Les are traveling the world together. And so I said, Les, you're going to be here. Would you share your story? And he, of course, agreed. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I present you with Mr. Lester Schrenk, 101-year-old ball turret gunner, veteran of World War II. Thank you, Les.
Thank you very much, Nick. I was born on a small dairy farm in 1923. It was very primitive. We didn't have running water, no electricity, not even a radio, and we used the outhouse. And on my 19th birthday, I enlisted in the Air Force. They sent us through training, very fast training, and within a year, I was ready for combat. They had trained me as being an aerial engineer in a ball turret on a B-17. For those that don't know what a ball turret is, it's located on the belly of the airplane about midway back. It's exactly 36 inches across, and you are in there with all your ammunition, 2 great big machine guns, and a great big computerized sight. I was way too large for the turret, but I happened to be the last one selected in that crew, and everybody else didn't want it. They were scared of it. So I was stuck with it, even though I was almost 6 feet tall, and the average ball turret gunner was 5'6", 5'7". So I couldn't wear my heavy suit and had to be rely on a electrical suit, and that thing had many, many malfunctions. We made a joke of it that it must have been designed by the enemy because it had so many malfunctions. Anyway, I started flying combat. My worst mission was the second one. It was to Aussersleben, Germany, to bomb an aircraft assembly plant. And we had started out, and unbeknown to us, the weather turned bad, and there were 3 different divisions. The 2nd and 3rd division got the callback notice, but for some reason our division did not, and we went on to bomb the target alone, and the Germans came in and just shot the heck out of us. Even before we got to the target, I felt a great big burn in my leg and looked down, my suit was on fire. I quickly put it out, but from then on, I had absolutely no heat at all. And the temperature where we were flying was usually anywhere minus 50 to minus 60 degrees, so I was not too comfortable. We just had bombed the target. There was a real loud explosion. It was so violent that it actually tipped the airplane upside down. When the pilot righted the airplane, there was a great big gaping hole where engine number 2 used to be. It was about 4 feet wide. We flew on a little bit farther. There was another great big loud explosion. I didn't think too much of it, but then I noticed that we couldn't keep up with the rest of the formation. And if you didn't stay in formation, you didn't stand a chance, because the Germans, the unarmed, just a lone bomber, is no match against the Luftwaffe. Like I said, we couldn't keep up with the formation, so the pilot would gun the engines trying to keep up. Then when we lagged behind, he would pull the throttles back and we'd join the formation behind us. Well, that happened 3 different times, and then at last there were no more formation behind us, so the pilot dove into the cloud bank that was below us, and we flew for hours with not being able to see anything, and you start wondering what else is in that cloud beside us. But anyway, at last the pilot broke through the undercast, and we were above England, and we were flying so slow that it was already getting dark, and fog was setting in, and the pilot saw an airfield below us, but for some reason when he was trying to contact them, they weren't answering him. But he had no choice but to land there anyway, and we soon found out why nobody gave a call back. It was an airfield that was under construction, and we almost hit a pile of stumps in the middle of the runway. But at least we were on the ground. My final mission, number 10, when we were briefed, we were elated because it was a target to Denmark, and any target that was not in Germany, the Germans didn't defend it nearly as well as they did German territory. But then we found out there was only 20 B-17s, and we were being used as a decoy to try to lure the Luftwaffe away from the main targets in the Ruhr. We had already left the target on our way back to England. We were again attacked by a great big formation of Ju-88 and Me-109 fighter aircraft. I saw the plane to our right get hit and dive into the ocean. I knew right away that there were no survivors. Just about a minute or two later, we were attacked, and there was a loud explosion, and I saw we were trailing fire of about 35, 40 feet. And just about that time, the pilot came on the intercom, asked the navigator where the nearest land, and the navigator came back and said, due east, 20 minutes to landfall. It was the number 4 fuel tank that was on fire, and it kept on exploding. I mean, it would just rock the whole airplane. It did that for 20 minutes, believe it or not. That's how tough a B-17 was. And when we barely hit landfall, there was one last final explosion and it blew the wing off. And of course, we all bailed out. We bailed out successfully, except the pilot had the misfortune of landing in a lake that had thin ice on it. He broke through the ice and was calling for help. The Danish people wanted to come and help him, but the Germans wouldn't let them, and they let the poor pilot die. Then after he was dead, then they made the Germans go out and get his body. The next morning, they put us on a train to Frankfurt. It was called Dulag Luft. It was an interrogation center. That night, I experienced my first air raid. It was the English bombing the nearby facility of IG Farben, a chemical plant. The Germans had deliberately built the POW camp right next to the chemical plant in violation of the Geneva Convention. And I believe, if I remember right, there were 6 POWs killed that night. The next morning, they herded about 500 of us into a great big room. It was all flyers that had been shot down either that day or a couple days earlier. And we had no idea what to expect, except we knew that it involved torture. In the background, you could hear men screaming, begging for mercy, crying out in pain, the sounds of being beaten, and even once in a while you'd hear a gunshot. You sat in that room listening to that, seemed like an eternity. I think I sat there for maybe 2, possibly 3 hours, just listening to all this going on. You couldn't help but being scared. The German guard would come and take one prisoner out at a time, and it was a one-way trip. They would never come back again. You come and get another one. When my turn came, the German guard that took me, if Hollywood wanted chosen him, they couldn't have done a better job. The first thing you noticed, he was missing his right arm right at the elbow. And the other thing, a great big deep scar right across his left side, so deep that he only had one eye. He wouldn't say a word to you. He carried what we called a burp gun. It was a kind of equivalent to our submachine gun. And he would take it and he would push you whichever way he wanted you to go. He guided me into this room, and there was a German officer. German officer acted just like he was my best friend. Would you like a cigarette? I said, no, thank you. He said, would you like to have a chair? And I said, no, thank you. I'd like to remain standing up. Then he looked at me and he says, you look like you're one of the lucky ones that you aren't too badly hurt. And I said, that's right. He said, well, you must have loved ones at home that you'd like to tell that you're safe and well. I said, that's right, sir. Well, we do that through the Red Cross. And he put this form out ahead of me, my mother and dad's name, address, and then all the rest of them were military questions of what altitude were you flying, what was your intended target, what other targets had you been briefed for, and of course I handed it back to him. And we had been told never give any information. When they would ask you something, give your name, rank, and serial number. That's all that's required. So I handed it back to him. He just went into a rage, and he had a Luger in his hand. He hit me across the head. And don't you think we know that you were at a B-17? Write it down. And of course, I kept on giving my name, rank, and serial number. He kept on beating me up, and it seemed like it was eternity, but I'm sure it wasn't any more than 4 or 5 minutes. Then at last he took his pistol and he put it right against my forehead, and he said, "You better answer the next question or else." And then, of course, you're thinking back the gunshots. I composed myself and gave my name, rank, and serial number again. He slapped me across the face, and the German guard behind me gave me a great big poke with the machine gun, and I flew out the door, and I breathed a sigh of relief because I knew the interrogation was over. I believe it was about the next day, they had us walk to a train station. It must have been, maybe a quarter of a mile away. There was snow on the ground, and they took our boots and socks away made us walk in the snow in the cold to prevent us from escaping. And oh my gosh, you knew you were in enemy territory. The civilians would come and shake their fist at you and spit at you and make every kind of a gesture to let you know that they didn't like you. They put us on a train, and we were on a train ride. I think it was about 4 days. Back up after the interrogation was over. It had been 4 days since we had anything to eat. And when they finally did give us something to eat, it was about a half a slice of bread with some kind of, it looked like jelly, but I found out after the war what it really was. It was something made out of beets. But when you're hungry that long, anything tastes good, believe me. When we were on the train, they did give us what they called 2 meals. What it was a cup full of some kind of powder. I think it was just ground beans or something like that. And they used the steam from the locomotive to make a kind of a soup out of it. That's all we got until we got to the prison camp, which was called Heidekrug, East Prussia, better known as Stalag Luft 6. It was a terrible place. There were great big rooms. The bunks were 3 high. The mattress was more like just a kind of a bag that had a few wood chips in it. To support the mattress, there were 3 boards about 8 inches across. 4 boards, 1 for your feet, 1 for your hips, 1 for your shoulder, 1 for your head, and no pillow. For covering, they did give us an American blanket, and then they also gave us a German blanket. But the German blanket, I got to explain it to you. If you held it up to the light, it was about like looking through a window screen. And at the time, I couldn't figure out what in the world it was made out of. I knew it was hair, but it looked like long hair from a horse's tail. But it was first after the war that I really realized what it was made out of. The Holocaust victims were shared, the women were shared, and we, no doubt, were sleeping under the hair of dead people. The food there was very, very, very inadequate. You got one meal a day if you got that. But if there was anything that irritated the Germans, like Allied victory or anything like that, you got no meal at all. You did get a cup of hot water. That and the one meal a day, that was it. There were Red Cross parcels that you occasionally got, but a Red Cross parcel isn't that big. If I remember right, it's about 8 inches across and 4.5 inches deep. And you never got a whole parcel, but you had to share with anywhere from 2 to 9 people. And if you got a Red Cross parcel, it was once a week. So we were constantly hungry. The barracks had no heat at all, so you were freezing. You had absolutely no entertainment or anything, so you were also bored. And it was a terrible place. It was no time at all that we're covered with fleas, lice, and bed bugs. Come summer, they gave us something. I'll have to describe it because I'm not even really sure what it was. It came in a tin can about that high. It had no label or anything. You could definitely tell it was some kind of fish. And if you open the can, it kind of a gray-brown stunk like heck. And we think what it was the residue of cod liver after the liver was extracted. But what the Germans had done, before they would give it to you, it was July, they would run their bayonets through it, leave it out in the sun. When you would get it, all the bayonet stabs were bubbling and oozing, and that's what you got to eat. And you had 2 choices. You either ate it, you got severe dysentery, or you starved to death. There was a great big rock in the compound. It looked pink, and somebody discovered that it had a salty taste. And they found if you chipped that off and mixed it with that fish or whatever it was, it would partially take away the rotten taste. But the problem was it wasn't all salt. It was half gravel and half salt. Like I said, it was a great big rock. By the time we left, the whole rock had been eaten. The Russians were approaching our camp. You could definitely see the flashes of light. A few days later, you could hear the rumble of cannon, and we were elated because we figured that we'd get liberated by the Russians. Not so. They evacuated the camp and loaded us on boxcars. The boxcar would be full. The Germans would take the bayonets and jab the guys in the doorway, making more room. And at last, you were in there just like pretzels. You couldn't. You just had to remain standing. It was July, and no food, no water, and the temperature just soared. This is the beginning of what we now call the Heidecrude run. You'll find out a little bit later why we called it that. Remember the town we were at with Heidecrude. They took us to the port of Memel and loaded us on 2 great big coal ships. There were about 5,000 POWs in each ship. And again, it was ships that had been used for hauling coal. There was only a space about that big with the great big ladder running down. And the Germans made us crawl down the ladder, threw our belongings down ahead of us. And we ended up being so crowded again that you had absolutely no chance to sit, but you had to remain standing. I believe we were on that ship 2.5 or 3 days, and no food, no water. To relieve yourself, you had to relieve yourself right where you stood. And of course, the filth and everything with that many bodies, the smell was not too good, put it that way. When we get to the destination, they put us on boxcars and hauled us to a camp called, Grostichow. It was in Poland. And there was this German captain there telling us how lucky we were. Today, you're not only going to get one Red Cross parcel, you're going to get 2 of them. And they handed out 2 Red Cross parcels to each guy. Well, before that, they had shackled us in 2, and they gave us each Red Cross parcel, so you had 1 under each arm. Oh, they also made you put your overcoat on, even though it was a hot July day. So now you are shackled with the overcoat on, with the Red Cross parcel under each arm. The minute they had the parcels doled out, I heard the order to affix bayonets. Then they released real vicious police dogs that were snapping at our heels, and the German captain kept on giving orders to shoot us. And that's where the Heidi Krug run came in. They ran us for 5 kilometers, otherwise it was about 3 miles. And you can about imagine being just famished and not having any water to drink or food to eat or anything, what it was like. One poor guy had 50 puncture wounds, some from the dogs biting him, others from being punched with a bayonet. When we got to this camp, they had us laying in a meadow. We were just parched, and the German guards, there were some pumps nearby. The German guards would come, pump water, throw it at us, just trying to taunt us. And all of a sudden, one of the guys started singing, "God Bless America." We all joined in, and that just absolutely infuriated the Germans that we could be in such tough shape and still be able to taunt them right back. Then most of the guys, of course, had dropped both their parcels. A few managed to keep one. I was so desperate, I don't know how I did it, but I kept both of my parcels. Then came what we call the strip search. You'd go through a room, and a German guard you'd have to completely strip, and he'd go through everything that you had looking for contraband. And oh my gosh, when I saw the guard that was going to search me, he was the most brutal guard. It was one of them that we had in Stalinluft 6. He was a monster of a guy, I would say he was well over 6'5", and he had great big hands. I think he must have done an awful lot of labor, but he was hateful. He would come up behind you, take his rifle butt, and jam it down on your arch, trying to break your arches. Other times he'd come and cuff you in the ear, trying to break your eardrums. That's the type of person he was. And the first thing he did was grab both my Red Cross parcels. I could speak German, and I told him those are Red Cross parcels and they're mine. He took out his Luger and hammered me on the head where I fell on the floor. I regained myself, told him again that they were Red Cross officers and they were mine. He hit me across the head, either the head or my jaw 5 different times, so hard that I would fall on the floor. And I finally realized if I kept on that he would have actually killed me. So I let him have the parcel. The minute his back was turned, I hadn't undressed or anything yet. I grabbed my belongings and bolted out the door. My head was a bloody mess. I took my overcoat and covered her where he couldn't see my head. And he realized what I had done, and he came marching back and forth looking for me. And I'm sure that if he would have found me, I wouldn't be here. But then that was the camp we called Stalag Luft 4. It was even worse than Stalag Luft 6 had been. We very, very seldom got anything to eat. If you did get something, it could even be like clover boiled into a soup. Otherwise, it'd be the equivalent of 1 potato. That's what you lived on per day. Our weight just went down. When I was captured, I weighed 185 pounds. When I was liberated, I weighed 93, but I had already been liberated about a week and a half, so I don't know if I maybe gained a little weight back during that time. But there again, the Russians were closing in. We could again hear cannons roar. And by that time, stage of the war, the Russians had taken so much German territory from the east, and the Allies had taken so much territory from the west, that all the prison camps were so full that they couldn't hold anymore. And that's now we go into what we call the German Death March. It was wintertime. In fact, they started us on the march on February 6th. They told us it would be a 2-day march. We started out in a blinding snowstorm. We had absolutely no protective clothing or anything. We had already been wearing the same clothes for way over a year. I could look down at my feet and see my toes. Stockings were completely gone. We were suffering from hunger and the bitter cold. And they just aimlessly marched us between the Allied lines with absolutely no destination. Sometimes if you got lucky, you slept in a farmer's barn. Other times you'd sleep right out in the open field. And it was just plain misery. This kept on for 86 days until May 3rd. We had been in this farmer's barn, and they told us that we're not going to march that day. And we thought something was very strange, but then pretty soon we saw a contingent coming up the road carrying a white flag. And here it was the British coming to liberate us. And the British had liberated us, were chasing Germans, so they told us we'd have to find our own way back to their camp, which I believe they said was 21 kilometers away. Anyway, it was quite a distance. And my buddies and I, we were so far gone, I think it took us quite a while to even realize what the heck was going on, that we're free. We started marching in the direction that the Brits had told us to go. And pretty quick we came to where there must have been a scrimmage the day before, and there were a bunch of dead Germans laying there. And for some reason, I have no idea to this day why, but I picked up one of the rifles. We kept on walking for quite a distance and became to a farmhouse, and I saw a couple horses in the yard. And I told the guys, I said, we've had it. I'm going to go up and demand those horses. So I went up and I knocked on the door, and a woman answered it. Oh, don't harm me, don't harm me. In German, of course. She said that I'm Polski and I'm a slave. And I assured her that we wouldn't hurt her, but I wanted to see the master of the house. When he came, I pointed the gun at him, and I said, we're taking your horses. Oh, no, you can't do that. They're lame. And I said, if you want to or not, we're taking your horses. Hitch them up for us. And I pointed the gun at him. Then he says, where do you want to go? And I told him where the outpost was. And he says, well, what if I hitch up my wagon instead and use my tractor to take you there? Will that be okay? And I said, yes, that'll be just fine. Along the way, we picked up all the stragglers that were on the road. And when we got to the camp, I thanked him and sent him back on his way. And there's where we had our first bath. And I finally was able to shave my whiskers were out about like that, which all during the time I was the POW, we had a chance to bathe 2 different times. That was when we were first captured. And to say it was really not a bath. What it was a pump outside in the wintertime, and your buddy would pump the pump, and you'd be under the faucet. No towel, no soap, no nothing to dry yourself. So that was the only 2 times I was even able to take a bath, all during the time of the POW, which was 15 months. And I'm going to skip to where I met the German pilots. It was quite a bit after the war. I got my first computer in the year 2000, and I happened to be listening to it was called B24.net was the unit. And I heard 2 historians talking to each other, and lo and behold, they were talking about the raid where we were shot down. And I broke in on them and told them that I was one of the crew members. And of course, they immediately lit up. And then I told them that I would very much like to visit the crash site, if they could give me a little more information of where it was, and perhaps put me in contact with anybody. And sure enough, a little while later, they gave me the email address of the Danish farmer where our plane crashed. And we started emailing back and forth, and pretty quick he invited me to come over to the crash site. That was in 2004. And we went there, and he even had rented some metal detectors and everything so we could hunt for relics of the plane. And we were lucky enough to find the actual serial number from our airplane. And I also found one of the handles from the control handles from from the ball turret. And the farmer was very much amazed because he said, for years, school kids have been scouring that for show and tell, and he thought they had found practically every piece of the wreckage. And here we come just one day, and we find the serial number, which I still have today. Then, like I said, we visited the crash site. We were sitting around the table discussing when I was captured, and I had mentioned that when we were first captured, that a high-ranking German Air Force person who came in was looking at us, and I said, I think perhaps it was the German pilot. And I said, I would very much have liked to have talked to him. And this one Danish guy says, I'll help you find him. He spent 4.5 years hunting for the German pilot. And unbeknown to us, the Germans protected they wouldn't give any information on anybody. And he was using the excuse that there was an American that wanted to put flowers on his grave, the pilot's grave, for saving his life. And he finally convinced one of them to give the address of the pilot. And he called that number, and a woman answered. He says, I've got an American that would like to put flowers on your husband's grave. She says, what do you mean, put flowers on my husband's grave? He said he read alongside of me. Anyway, I wrote a real nice letter to him, thanking him for saving our life by not keep on. If he would have kept on shooting when we were on our way back, I wouldn't be here. But anyway, I wanted to thank him for saving our lives. And I got a real nice letter back from him. And we started emailing each other. And in 2012, he invited me to come over to Heidelberg to visit him, which we did. He treated us like a king. He arranged trips up the, what river is it again? No, not the Rhine, Neckar River, to where there were some old castles. He took us through them. He even invited us to his house, and he showed me all of his war ribbons and medals. And I had mentioned that to the German lady that lives in the same place I did. And I mentioned that to her. She said, what? She says, that is so unusual. Usually they won't show anything like that. And you come, and he doesn't even know you that well, and he showed you all that. She said, I can't believe it. So apparently he must have been very touched at my wanting to come and visit him. We remained friends until he died a number of years later. And he spoke perfect English. He didn't know English during the war, but after the war he flew for NATO, and that's where he learned his English. But then right at the very last, he got a stroke. For some reason, he forgot all of his English and could only speak in German. But unfortunately, he died about 6 months later. I'm still in contact with his granddaughter. At one time, she even came to the States to visit me.